Good day and welcome to King 4 to King 5 Masterclass. South Africa's King 5 Code on Corporate Governance has officially arrived, and it is fundamentally redefining how boards govern, lead, and create value in an increasingly complex world. In this masterclass, we will unpack the transition from King 4 to King 5, and more importantly, what that transition means in practical boardroom terms. This session is specifically designed for board chairs, non-executive directors, audit and risk committee members, executives and governance professionals. If you are involved in oversight, accountability, or strategic leadership, this session is for you. Now, let me be clear from the outset. This is not a theoretical discussion. This is a boardroom-level briefing focused on what has changed, what it means, and what you must now do differently. Over the next 3 hours, we will explore the real differences between King 4 and King 5, the 13 King 5 principles explained in practical, actionable terms, the critical shift from compliance-driven governance to outcomes-based governance, what King 5 means across different contexts, all listed companies or state-owned entities or private companies or non-profit organizations. We will also unpack how boards must now approach AI, digital governance, and ESG, the new disclosure framework, and what must now be reported, the tightening of expectations around independence, remuneration, and accountability, and importantly, you will walk away with a clear board action plan to begin aligning your organization with King 5. If there is one idea I want you to keep in mind throughout this session, it is this. King 5 is not about doing more governance. It is about thinking differently about leadership, accountability, and value creation. This session is relevant to current and aspiring non-executive directors, board and committee members, executives transitioning into governance roles, professionals who are serious about boardroom impact. To support your learning, I've made available a set of practical resources that you can download. The King 5 Board Action Checklist, the King 4 to King 5 Briefing Document, the full King 5 Report Package, including the Code, Foundational Concepts, Disclosure Framework, Glossary. You can access all of these using the link provided. This is not a one-way session. As we go through the material, I encourage you to reflect and engage, and I'll leave you with this question. What do you believe is the single biggest shift introduced by King 5? We'll come back to that as we go through the session. Let's begin.
Good morning once again. And welcome to the training from King 4 to King 5. So this training is a 3-hour training. So it's going to be from now until 12 o'clock. All right. So just to note, I see some people have not yet joined. Here, let me just also switch on so that okay, check. All right, yeah, I see the video is okay. All right, I'm gonna start now. Just wanted to make sure that the video is on. All right, welcome to the King 4 to King 5 masterclass. So this is a training, 3-hour training. So we are going to be looking at what boards must know and what boards must do. All right, so this is sort of the way we are going to approach it. So in other words, what we should know in terms of the change, from King 4 to King 5, and then also what boards will do, right? So during the course of the training, we will look at a practical tool that a checklist that we'll go over again as well towards the end of the training. All right. So just to start once again, good morning. My name is Taka Sande. So I will be your facilitator or presenter for this course. All right. Before I go on the agenda, after this training, you will receive a copy of the presentation. You also receive the briefing document of the training. You also receive a link to the recording of this training. And also you will receive one of the resources that we've prepared for you, which is a board King 5 checklist, so that you can check within your board and see if you complied with the various things, so that it's easy for your board in order to transition from King 4 to King 5. All right, so that material will send that to you. And also we will give you access as well to King 5. Maybe let's do that as well. Actually, access to King 5, we can do that as well. It's also giving you the checklist that I can do for now. All right, so let's look at the agenda. So this is the topics that we will cover, setting the context, just to know why do we now have King 5? Why now? And what has changed? And also the architecture of King 5, just to show what does it look like, what are the various components that are there in King 5. We will also look now at the 13 principles in King 5, but now we will not go in detail. It's just a highlight each of the 13 principles that are in King 5, and also to see what does it mean in terms of the practical application of each of the 13 principles. And then we also look, because some organizations have been using King 4, but now they want to change to King 5. What does it mean? What are the changes? What are the new things that King 5 is bringing? So we also look at the strategic shifts that are there from King 4 to King 5. And then one of the big things around King 5 is disclosure. So here I called it disclosure revolution. So it's about a lot of disclosure. Actually, it's big about on disclosure, King 5. So we will also look at that, pay a bit of attention of that. And then we'll now look at the application of King 5 across various sectors. That is, if you're in government, if you're in private sector, non-profit, how does it, even listed entities, how can you approach King 5? Then topic number 7, we'll look at the board in action, some practical implementation, and then we'll also look at the interactive board simulation. That I think we won't have time to do that. Probably we'll spend more time on number 7, which is the checklist, just to go through how to use the checklist for your board, because the checklist is divided into 2 sections. One section is for the chair of the board, sort of having a summary in terms of the checklist, things the board's supposed to have. And the second section is the bigger section of the checklist, which is more detailed in terms of the checklist for the board. And then we will close by just having a few comments in terms of the future of governance, right? In between, we are going, maybe after 1.5 hours, we will have a 15 minutes break, just to catch up with your coffee, with your tea, before we go on. All right, so this is the agenda. All right, so what I'm going to do right now, right, I am going to drop in the chat a link to King 5 document so that you can download it for yourself. And also I'll send you again the checklist as well, so that you can have it once time to go through it, you have it. So let me try to do that right now. If you want to access, yeah, I saw Vanessa, your comments. Yeah, you can always come back once you've done, when you're done with your meeting. Just for in order to access King 5, it's available on the Institute of Director website. That's where I'm going. I'm going to send you the link just now. So it's available for free. The reason being, we want people to be able to access this report. So we want, it's about change. So I am going to post in the chat the link so that you can see where you can download the King report. So there's a lot of documents that are around it. But what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to drop in the documents also in the chat as well, right? Let me just look for the document. It's a number of documents, King 5 code. So in total, there are 5 documents, 4 documents that are there. Let me see if I can drop in the chat. It's not allowing me, so let me do it again. It doesn't want me to drop in the chat, and I can't see the function for attachment. But in the meantime, just go to the Institute Director website, and then you can actually get the document from there. It's not allowing me, but anyway, I've sent you the link to go on the Institute of Director website. You can download the documents. So the documents that you're going to be downloading, that is the King 5 foundational concepts. Okay, let me do this. I'm going to drop the chat in the chat, the link to the document there, so you can download it directly. And the next document is actually the main document, which is the King 5 code. This document, okay, is the glossary, because now the terms that are used, there's also a glossary that goes with that. So I'm going to send that to you. And then lastly, the disclosure framework. All right. So I'm going to drop in the chat again. So here are the 4 documents which are part of the King. So you can download, directly download. If you click, it's going to open the document, and then you can download it. All right. So if you can maybe spend a minute or so just downloading Apologies for that. Someone is trying to join. All right. Yes, I'm going to drop you the link in the chat. Thanks. All right. I hope you managed to download all the 4 documents. So just put them in the folder, maybe on your device. At the same time, I want to send you the checklist as well. So see how I can do this. All right, I'm gonna send, maybe I'm gonna send everything on the invite. All right, so what I'm gonna do, the invite that you received, all the meeting, let's check if I can attach here. I'm going to send you, I'm going to send you, just a second. All right, I'm going to send you the King code there. And I'm going to send you the checklist as well. Right. So I'm going to send you also. So on the invite, I am going to send it again, but now with the documents. So, right, so that you can, so just check your email, you find the documents in. So there's going to be 5 documents that has been attached now to the same invite that you used to join the event. Let me just check if it is gone.
Oh yes, ingqesese no bengiku.
Morning, Doc, and welcome. All right, you came with a bang. So I've sent you the King 5 documents, the set of 4 documents, and I've sent you the board checklist. So if you check on the invite, I've resent again, and then you can also download it as well by email. So what I'm going to do now, before we even start, just to go through the documents that I've sent to you, because I will be referring to those documents during the training. So I'm going to go through so that you just have a feel of what they look like. So just a second, as I open the 5 documents. It's great. So let me share my screen so that you can see. All right. So this document is the board, King 5 board checklist. I think I've mentioned about it. So it's about 9 pages or 8 pages long. So yeah, the purpose of this document is to make sure there's alignment of the board and also with King 5, right? So just cover page. And the first part, this is more like the executive summary of the checklist. So the intention of this is not a summary, but it's a tool for the chair or for AGM where you don't want to go into detail. So it's a high level so this is the first part of the document. And then the second part, this is now the detailed checklist with the various areas that you sort of look at for your board. So we'll go through this later on during the training. Now, the next document that you're looking at is the disclosure framework. So it's part of the King 5. So it's the disclosure document, just to show because now King 5, it's big on disclosure. So we have to be transparent, that's where it's taking us to. So in terms of each principles, so this is a framework in terms of how to do it. Unlike King 4, yes, we're saying the board must disclose, but it did not give a framework how to do it. So now King 5 provide a framework. So this is the disclosure framework. We will go through it later on. And then the next document, this is the actual King code, the main document. So just to show what it looks like, it has got 13 principles, as you can see. The first 2 sections, and that's like the preliminary information about the concept or foundation of the code, the principles, just to give, and then from there onwards, you go into the principles. So just to quickly go through the foundational foundation, here they give the definition of corporate governance, and you find that the definition is still the same, like King 4. Is the exercise of ethical and effective leadership. So it's already in there already. So there is no change in terms of the definition. And then the building blocks of the code, it's about governance outcome. So having compliance is good, but what King 5 is looking for is the outcome. So you can do a lot of things in terms of your governance and board, but what are the outcomes? So that's the approach that's coming in, emphasis of King 5. Then also the principles, we'll look at them, recommendation for practice, and then disclosure, and they're just pointing out to the disclosure that we I've just shown you. Here, the apply and explain principle that was in King 4 is still applies. So we still go on, but in addition to that, you need now to disclose, right? So you don't have to explain. No, you need to disclose. So it says we are going into it's more transparency that King 5 is advocating. So it's more transparency compared to King 4. Underpinning philosophies of King 5, sustainable development and value creation. Yeah, I think King 5 emphasis as well on value creation. King 4, it mentioned it. Sustainability, yes, but value creation, King 4 was not strong, but King 5 is more strong. Value creation. As an organization, we need to create value, for our stakeholders, whether you're non-profit, private, whichever sector that you are. So yeah, and then the integrated thinking, yes, we started in King 4, we are continuing with that, and also the related concepts around integrated thinking, like the 6 capital model, it's still relevant again in King 5. Then the principle starts from here, all right? So this is the main King 5 document, right? The next document is the glossary. So the glossary is basically the definition of terms. So those terms like accountability, assurance, so capitals, so all these definitions are here. So this brings us so that we've got a common understanding of all these terms. All right. So that was the glossary, and then document, the fourth document, we should be the first apparently in the series, is the foundational concepts. So here, unlike King, foundational concepts in King 4, we're inside the documents and we're brief, but now King 5 is more comprehensive because we want to know what is motivating King 5. What is it that is taking us? Why are we doing what we are doing? So this is like a table of contents, just showing the what is in the document. So maybe I'll quickly go through just to understand. So definition of corporate governance, we saw that is as well in the main document. Ethical and effective leadership is essence of sound corporate governance. The governance outcome, talked about it, which is ethical culture, performance and value creation, and then conformance and prudent control and legitimate. So these are the 4 governance outcomes that are there. So it's also still applied. So there's not much change in terms of the outcomes comparing King 4 and 5, because King 4, let's say when he talks about performance, it was just performance, but now King 5 is saying adding value creation. So the idea of performance is not just to perform, but you need to create value as a business. And then the other change was the next one, control. In King 4, it was just control. But here we are saying conformance and prudent control. So this is now placing more responsibility on the board as well. And then legitimacy and culture, ethical culture, they still remain. So these are the 4 outcomes of governance. The overarching role and functions of the governing body, they are almost the same, but a bit different, right? So this is sort of but it's still the same. It's just a bit different in terms of, it's still the same basically. But now there's a bit of addition in terms of the information around that. So the role of the board, or the function of the board, is 4 functions: accountability, steering and setting direction for the organization, policy and planning, and then oversight and monitoring. So they're still the same, no much change compared to King 4. But here, what we are seeing now here, there's more information now in terms of what is accountability. Now, accountability is about the formal reporting in commitments and performance and other disclosures and engagement. So you find that King, the principle number 4, is on reporting, right? So there's also an emphasis still there from King 4, and it's still here as well, and King 5. And then steering and setting the tone. This is the role of the governing body. So tone and example. So the board must be an example to the organization. So in terms of setting the direction, that is the purpose, vision, and values of the organization culture, the strategy, risk and opportunities from economic, social, and environmental. So here, maybe let me come back again, because here it ties in also to sustainable development. We are talking about the risks, right, and opportunities that are there, right? But not just economic, but also social as well, because this is where stakeholders come in. Our engagement with the stakeholders come in, and also the environmental, that is the sustainability part of it. And then also the third function, board, policy and planning. I think this is straightforward. Policies that give effect to the strategy, because once you set the strategy, right, the strategy you are planning, right, strategic plan, but you need policies that enable the strategy to be realized. So operationalize the plans, budget, and allocation of resources. And then finally, the fourth role, which is oversight and monitoring. Now that the organization is performing, now you need to provide oversight and monitoring, achievement of key performance areas and indicators. This is a consequence of organization activities and outputs. So these are the 4 roles or functions of the governing body. So you find that it's outwards, it's also inwards, and also it's about conformance as well as performance. So when we also look at past orientation, in other words, where the organization has been, but also we are looking at the present and future as well. So just to summarize in terms of how boards now should look at things, we're having a conversation yesterday with Dr. Peter Crow, and we ended up talking about that boards must focus, have a forward look more than the past, right? Because we see this is an era with a number of boards. They spend more time in processing reports of their past performance and, looking at, which is, I think is good, right? But you need to have a forward looking. Where are we going? You spend more time looking forward. Now, I say that's why maybe in a vehicle, you've got your windscreen is bigger than the rear view, because where you've come from, yes, it's important, but remember, you're not going there, but be aware of that. But where you're going, this is where you need to spend more time on. So here, the emphasis on the present and the future orientation. All right. So this is I just show the role of the board. And then just go down again, respective roles of the governing body and management. So this is just to tie up to that. Organization of recommended practice. I think this one is straightforward. And then application and disclosures. So these there's a disclosure a framework that is also attached to this to King 4 or 5. And then the scope of application, I think this is straightforward. You can read this. Building blocks, the governance outcome, the principles, recommended practices. So here just to show the governance outcome, principles and recommendations. So you start from the recommended practices that translate into principles that now translate into outcomes. So you start by practice, right? You practice what you do, then it goes into principles and then the outcomes. So this is how the King 5 is sort of structured. And then proportional implementation of recommendation. I think this is straightforward. Disclosure, again, we've seen this. They apply and explain, and how the emphasis of disclosure in King 5, right? Disclosure framework, we've seen it. So I think sustainable value creation by organization, I think we've covered that. And then shareholder value as well. It's also part of that, because when you create values, you've got the shareholders, we've provided capital in the organization. So now they're looking for value as well, and all other stakeholders as well. So also shared values as well. So you see now we are now moving, not just shareholders, but now we are moving to other stakeholders as well. Shared, this is just show the evolution of perspective in value creation from shareholder value, go to shared value, and then you go to systems value. So when you look at shareholder value, usually you're talking about the financial capital they've invested, but now we go to a shared value. So this is now we go to corporate citizenship, where we now involve other stakeholders as well who are there, and also systems value. It's not just about the immediate stakeholders of the organization, but you are a corporate citizen as an organization, the whole world. So you go into that space. So that's show the evolution from the shareholder value. It goes on to the whole. And then the idea of integrated thinking again also comes here. They also put in this to just show, when you look at integrated thinking, the first model is the economic, social, and environmental context. So when we think, we look at the economic context, the social context, as well as environmental context. So this is how we approach it. But as we do that, we need to break it down into 6 capitals, which are the resources that are used by organizations as they do their business. So here are the 6 capitals: financial, manufactured, intellectual, human, natural, as well as social and relationship capitals. So these are the capitals that are used by the organization. But remember, the 6 capitals are coming from the 3 economic, social, and environmental contexts, and then you translate to that into the 6 capitals. So this model was applicable in King 4 and is still applicable as well in King 5. So this brings to the integrated thinking, where it's not just about you, it's about everybody who is there. It's about all the stakeholders that are there. Now, for the first time, King is bringing in Ubuntu and Ubuntu into integrated thinking. Now, just to give a background, because these words were not used from King 1 until now. So for me, in my own opinion, this was supposed to be embedded way back until now, because this is what we are talking about, Ubuntu Ngabantu. So this is how, because it's integrated thing, it's not just about yourself and your own whatever, but we are a shared community. It's a corporate citizenship, if you put it in the English terms. So just to give you a background, King 5, the King 1, when King was first introduced way back, 94, around there. We were going towards 94. So Madiba, by then we were going into democracy, and the question was, how are we assured that commercial interests are going to override the other stakeholders? So that was the big worry, and apparently it was not just Madiba and who was thinking about that. It was actually a worldwide thinking, because at that particular time when Nelson Mandela spoke to Professor King about this, UK was preparing the Canterbury Report. So also the same idea that the capital provider is not going to override the other stakeholders who are also there. So that was sort of the thinking around it. And it was more important as we move into democracy that we need to ensure that there is equity and things like that. So after that conversation, and Professor King started to work about setting up a team and then produce the first King report on corporate governance. And I think they were launched almost simultaneous as well as UK. Now, I think, I don't know how many weeks before each other, but we were one of the first, or the first country to have such a corporate governance code in the whole world. It was only UK and then followed by South Africa. So that is a country, it put us on the table, in terms of international, because people were also looking to prepare their own governance code. Now they have to come to UK and South Africa as the two who have the code. So, and the way it was prepared as well, it was also well done. So that is how we managed to go into the international scene in terms of corporate governance. Until now, we are leading in terms of corporate governance. I always say, besides UK, in terms of corporate governance. For example, sorry, I'm just digressing just to give you some information around that, because, for example, we've got ISO 37000, which is by ISO, the governance. You find that I always say, when I'm reading the ISO 37000, it's like I'm reading King, sort of, because they took a lot from King, because you take a lot from there, and also the COVID again that was there as well. We find that a lot of South Africans were involved. It was a major contributor of the people who were on the table. So as a country, our contribution in terms of corporate governance worldwide, it's remarkable, and we need to keep the momentum going. And even I was listening to a webinar, which was in Malaysia, in Asia, and there was this professor now talking about King 4 and so forth. And I'm saying, I'm in South Africa. So King has been a document that is respected worldwide, and also the way it puts things across, and it's just to set the tone for other codes as well, right? I wanted to just express that. But I was saying that now King 5, it really emphasized the point that was there from the beginning, that it's all about Ubuntu. That was the thing around it. So here they had to include that. Corporate citizenship as an expression of integrated thinking. I think this one is straightforward. We also need to, as an organization, you don't live in isolation. You've got other stakeholders who are there as well, right? Stakeholder inclusivity as an expression of integrated thinking. This is now the stakeholder inclusivity as well. So in other words, we don't there to look at the providers of capital only, but all stakeholders who are there. So we need also to consider their interest. Whereas the old way of seeing things, especially late then, it was just the shareholder value. That's what we're looking for. But now we need to include other stakeholders as well and consider their interest as well. Now here it's now about director's duties, integrated reporting. So following up from the integrated thinking, you also emphasize here the integrated reporting and integrated report. Now, just to give you a bit of a background on this, so King recommend, especially for larger organization, to also consider integrated thinking, and if possible, actually create an integrated report. All right. I just want to pause here for a second, just a minute. Just give me a second. Apologies for that. So now coming out of the integrated thinking, now we've got what we call the International Integrated Reporting Council. Also, a lot of people from South Africa involved as well from that. So in terms of governance, we are very, very sort of active in that. So there we've got a framework which we produce the integrated report. Maybe to just take another step, maybe two back, right? As an organization, you produce financial reports, right? We know about that. With our cash flows, we've got our statements and so forth as reports that you produce. But now, financial reports don't say anything about other issues in the organization. So that's why at the end of the day, we produce an annual report. So an annual report on the organization performance. So you are looking at the financials will be there, but other as an organization, how are we doing, right? But besides the annual report, you can also produce an integrated report. Now, usually just to maybe some smaller organizations, I don't want to say there is no need, but yeah, smaller organizations don't necessarily produce integrated reports, but large organizations, especially listed entities, they produce integrated reports. So an integrated report just present the information in terms of the organization as is. What are we doing good? What are we not doing? And what are we doing not so good? And what are we going to do about it? So it's integrated in terms of, it's not just the successes of the organization, what we did, but also even what we didn't do well. You need to disclose. So this is where the disclosure, it ties in also with disclosure. If we are polluting as an organization, we might have to say, yes, we are polluting, and what are we going to do about it? So the integrated report encompasses all. This double materiality expression of, I think I've covered that. Effective date, I think this brings us to the end. So I was just touching on just to share you the documents, the King 4 documents, and I managed actually to go through all of the documents. I'm going to come back to my slides just to continue. For those who just joined us, we are still starting the conversation. I've sent in the documents, which is the King report, the 4 documents that are there, and I've sent you also a board checklist that you can use as a practical tool in terms of ensuring that you comply. So I was just sending that information, but now I'm going to move on to, sorry, I didn't go through the slide. So this is about myself. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but yeah, most of you you're aware of myself, right? Right. Let's just now setting the context. We now seen the documents, but now let's just set the context. So King 5 is not about compliance, right? I think I've mentioned that. If you've seen when I was talking, I was hinting to that. It's not compliance, but it's about survival in complexity. So that's the aim sort of this document. There's a shift from governance as an oversight to governance as a value creation system. So if you look back, we were just looking at an oversight, but the question, what is oversight? Those are the questions that we may perhaps have to think. What is oversight, and how do you know that you've done adequate oversight? So those are questions that sort of remains a bit unanswered. But now, what do we want to achieve in King 5? It's value creation. As an organization, you need to create value. Whether you are government-related organization, if I say ESCOM, we all understand that because we can feel what they need to produce. Are they producing the value? How good are they? How can we measure that value? Are they doing good? What are they? So as an organization, you must provide value. Let's say you are a municipal entity, for example, still in government again. Are you are producing the value you're supposed to produce? Private sector, I think, is quite clear. Non-profit as well. As a non-profit organization, yes, you are not for profit, but profit is not the value, is not the only value here. What are you supposed to produce as a non-profit entity? You might even be a non-profit entity with members. Who are you giving value to the members of your organization? So this is where King 5 wants to emphasize, right? King 5 is not about compliance. It's about cultivating relevance and resilience in the volatile world. Right? Realities that boards face, governance failure. So at the moment, you've seen a lot of governance failures. It's quite horrific. This week, we saw a lawyer who was gunned down for doing what is good, which is really very scary for our country, where we've come, where we are now. It's not, it's unbelievable. It's like we are watching a horror movie. Believe me, when I read the news, it's like it's horror. It's like, how are we surviving here? You wonder, how are we going to survive here? Because now if you say what is right, if you do what is right, you might be killed. You are in danger for doing what is right. So this is where, as a nation, where we are, and we need to change, right? If you look at our economic, the inequality, it still exists. If you look where we're supposed to come from and where we are, and you try to measure how much change has really happened, you find that perhaps, there's a bit of a change here and a bit of there, but there's no, a holistic change that shows that now the inequality has changed. And remember, South Africa is a nation. We are known worldwide as the country with the biggest inequality. In other words, it's not that we've got the most poorest people or the most richest people, but the gap in between, our poorest and our richest. The gap is unbelievable, so big, so that it raises a concern that, what are we really, where are we going as a country? If you look at corruption, where are we going? I may just mention about our lawyer, a good lawyer who was gunned down in this week. It shows the things that are happening. Some are very, very horrific. If you look at the state capture, yes, it was there. Yes, we can say it's no longer there. But it doesn't mean that things are better, because now, if you look, there is now the rise of the mafias. So state capture was just replaced by the mafias. And the mafias, they're all over. We've got logistics mafia, we've got construction mafia, you've got in every industry, there seems to be a mafia that is operating there. The corruption is very, very high. You can read the commission that is going on, where things that are being said, they are unbelievable. If you listen to the story, if you are a general and you find yourself having conversation with someone who is very known to be involved in illegal activities, and this person or leader doesn't feel there's nothing wrong with it, perhaps I wonder, where is your moral compass? And not only that, you went on to borrow money from the same person and you say, no, it's okay, there was nothing wrong. I wonder what has happened to our ethical culture, as a country. Institutional decay, we've seen this. Our institutions are really going down, in things are getting worse and worse every day. It's not getting better in terms of our institution, and our institutions are really failing. If you look at the police, are we happy with the service we're getting from our police? Yeah, you you can answer that for yourself. Just pick one. I just took one. There are many other institutions that are there, and there's a lot of decay. There's a lot of failure. They're failing our citizens. Trust in our institutions is going down. Governance, legacy. We need to restore that legacy. The rule of law in mafia, I think I've mentioned that. Now, this means that it's necessary for us to have a good governance in our organization. So let's look at what has changed and why King 5 was necessary. So now, King 5 was launched in 2017, 16. So we are talking about 10 years ago. Yeah, around 10 years ago. And a lot of things have happened, a lot of changes that has happened. One of them is the evolving of ESG, environmental, social, and governance expectations. They have changed over the last 10 or more years. And also, if you look at international scene in terms of ESG, we've got the International Sustainability Standard Board, which govern. This is in Europe, and also the European Sustainability Reporting Standards that are also being implemented. And this also necessitates that we also need to be at an international level in terms of our ESG, Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive. In EU, they actually instructed that large listed companies, they need to have a corporate sustainability reporting, in their reporting. So those are the changes that are sort of happening at international level, and there was need for us to upgrade, in terms of also the Sustainable Development Goals. Right? We know about them. The question, did we realize? I won't go there, but these are the things that perhaps we need also to consider. This also motivated the need to have King 5. In terms of technology disruption, so this has been one of the areas there's been a lot of change in terms of technology disruption. So if we look way back before COVID, there was a lot of organization were hacked and information went missing. Boards didn't know what to do. So there are a lot of cybersecurity issues way back there. And the board didn't know what to do, basically, and these board members, some of them don't even know what really happened in the organization, because they don't know how technology in the organization is functioning. So there was a need to ensure that the board is competent in governance of technology. So from that moment on, we started to say, no, we need technology experts at board level, so that the board is well informed in terms of governance this technology, the use of its technology, as well as also when some of these things also happen in the organization. So this also started to bring us to say, no, we need governance of technology. And recently, now after COVID, now AI, artificial intelligence, is now part of us, and our boards prepared for that. So those are the comments as well that are also coming in. So the board must be able to know how to govern technology. So in terms of artificial intelligence, it's going to be two sides. How the organization is going to use artificial intelligence inside the organization. And also the other side is how the board as well can use AI as a tool for governance as well. So the board must be competent as that. That also means that we had to update King 4 to King 5. In the past years, we've seen a number of change in terms of a legal landscape and also a regulatory complexity that is there. For example, the Companies Act, there was been some changes that were also introduced. Maybe just to take one step back, King is in compliance with Companies Act. So that is maybe the point of departure. So King is complying with Companies Act. So now we now have these changes to Companies Act that also necessitated the change in terms of King to King 5. Also, disclosures in King 4 were fragmented and it was not clear in terms of disclosure. Yes, you're supposed to disclose, but how? And so King 5 now wanted to bring that to say, now, this is actually how you can do it. So that's why King 5 has got a framework for disclosure. And then also in the past few years, we've seen the rise of stakeholder activism. So that also necessitated that. So when we look at stakeholder activism, it can be from all sorts of groups. Now, thinking about it, yes, it's a number of groups. We've got shareholders. There are also stakeholders as well, who are activism as well. We are shareholders who say, no, if the board doesn't, put in this policy, let's say, for example, in terms of ESG, we will remove the board. So shareholders are actually activists these days as well. So, which is something that a trend that is going on and it's going to continue. So, if the board does not address some social injustice, you will find that some shareholders will remove the board, so there has been a drive towards activism and other stakeholder activism as well that is there. Usually it's to do with environmental related issues and climate change related issues. This is where we find a lot of excitement around that as well. So King 5 come in as well to sort of cover those areas where boards didn't know what to do. I was reading years back, I think it's Standard Bank, where the shareholders were saying, no, we will remove the board. It's now more than, I think we're towards COVID. We're saying that we will remove the board if they don't put these policies to do with ABC. So you can find the way. So that activism of stakeholders, King 5 comes in also and sort of provide guidance around that. So I want to know from your side, if you've got access to the chat. I know some of you might be at work or you are driving. Maybe if you can answer from your own experience in the chat, what has changed in your boardroom in the last 3 years that King 4 did not anticipate? In other words, what has changed? I think some of them are actually on the slide. In your own organization or in your board, what has changed in your space, which the boards, the King 4 did not anticipate? Because King 4, we are talking about 20, it's a bit way back then. So what are those changes that has happened? If you can drop in the chat, if you are able to. Now, let's look at the King 5 just to show the structure. I know I've already gone through it, the documents a bit, but just to do another sort of highlight, just to go through the documents. So you've got the code, you've got the foundational concept. I think I went through this in a bit of detail, and you've got a disclosure framework, and then you've got the glossary. So there are 4 documents that you have. It's a bit of a set, that you have. But some of the information from what you've seen, it's also repeated in the other documents as well. So just be aware of that. But we have gone through these documents. We'll go through them as through the slides, right? The core logic of King 5, I think we also saw this, is practice, principles, and then you translate them into outcome. So at the end of the day, we want outcomes. This is what we want. You can be doing a lot of activities, so you don't judge. They say governance judged by outcomes, not activities. So you can do a lot of things as a board, but what are the outcomes? I think it makes sense because this is what we really want, not just the noise, but the outcomes. Where are they? We judge you based on the outcomes rather than the activities that are there that you are running around and doing. All right. In terms of the governance outcomes, I think I've spoken about these. There are still 4 governance outcomes, the same outcomes that were in King 4, but here there's a bit of small changes that are there, but the 4 governance outcomes are in ethical culture. So the idea is this, of ethical culture. We want ethics to be a culture, not a tick box exercise. So a tick box exercise is where we just tick. Have we done this? We did this, we did this. But the truth is that you may do things that are not ticked. So in other words, we want an ethical culture, not just to comply. We want to go beyond compliance and do what is good, even if it's on the not on the tick sheet. We will do it because it's ethical. So we go beyond compliance to create an ethical culture. And now the question, how do we do that? It takes time. But yes, we want to do that. I can give you an example of what I've seen. Many organizations, we will say they will find a poster in the building and workplace saying that ethics, we are an ethical organization, and they say this a lot, which is good. It's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can do better than that. To say that we actually say that our core values, yes, I've got it. Our core values is ethics. It's a nice word to say, but you want to go beyond that and say this: report corruption, or we report corrupt activity and ethical activities to this number and this email. Now this has changed because it's not just a compliance issue now. It's about action. You're providing the phone number. You're providing the email to report unethical activities. So it's no longer just we've got ethical values, but you are showing the values by doing so. That's where what King 5 is trying to advocate. Let's go beyond compliance. Let's actually do it. Performance and value creation, I think we've talked about it. As an organization or as a governing body, ensure that the organization is performing well, especially providing the value, or rather creating the value it promised its stakeholders to create. Right. I think I'm going to repeat that. The board or the governing body should ensure that the organization is creating the value it promised its stakeholders. So I'm using the word stakeholders because it's not just shareholders. We've got other stakeholders as well. Are we providing that value that we promised? So that is the second outcome. The third is conformance and control, to ensure that to control the organization and make things under control. There are various policies that need to be in place and governance documents to ensure that there's control and there's conformance. Legitimacy, and also ensure that there's legitimacy as well in the organization. Right. I've put it on that, I've highlighted that a board can be compliant and still fail governance. So I think this is a mindset across the continent. I was having conversation around that. That one thing about African boards and governance in Africa, compliance is a big thing, which is good, right? But we need to go beyond compliance to value creation. So as a board, you can comply all the tick box, but fail as an organization. So that's why now we need to ensure that all these outcomes, all of them, it's not just compliance, but all of them, we focus on them. I can give you a good example that we won't mention, but I'm involved currently with an organized government-related organization in local government, which is having trouble. But guess what? In the previous audit, they got a clean audit. After getting the clean audit, and they make a call and say we are having trouble. So you can see that you can comply. Everything is ticked, but things are not well. So compliance is a matter of ticking the box. You can do that, and you're still failing in governance. I think from their sake, they did a good move. We really complimented, commended them. Say no, you did a good move. A clean audit, as you can see, doesn't mean that you're doing well financially. You're doing bad. So how can we turn around? So that's why it's important now to focus on all these outcomes. It's not just compliance only, but it's bigger than that. Let's move now to value creation, because this is where sustainability comes from when we are creating the value. Right. This is the where we are going to look now to the 13 principles in King 5. I'm going to pause here for any comments or any questions. If there are any questions or any comments. Just also checking my time. We will have a break. I think in the next few minutes we'll take a break. But let's start with the 13 principles. Right. Now I've clustered the principles for ease of discussion into various clusters, just to make it a bit easy to sort of engage around them. Right. So the first two principles, principle number one, is on leadership. We say the governing body must lead ethically and effectively as the focal point of governance in the organization. So I think this one is straightforward. So linking to this now will be the definition of corporate governance as well. It should also link into that, which is ethical and effective leadership. Right. So you find that this principle basically is the definition of corporate governance that is in there. That is the principle. It's leadership. That's where it starts from. And then also the second principle is about ethics. So maybe before I even go in further again, maybe I'm going to talk about it after this. King 4 had 16 principles, right? But now King 5 has got 13 principles. They've been reduced. Now, we used to say this during King 4, that some of the principles are being repeated. So what King 5 did, it consolidated those principles that were being combined. They were combined so that it's just 13 principles, and then that's it. So King 4 was repeating some of the principles in a way, just providing different angles to the same thing, right? So now, principle number 2 is about ethics. So the governing body govern the ethics of the organization in a way that emphasizes the ethical culture and responsible corporate citizens. So the idea that we want as we govern is to ensure that the organization has an ethical culture, right? So it's not a tick box exercise, right? We've got an ethical culture embedded in us. This is how we do things. We are not doing this because we're afraid of the auditors, but this is the good thing to do, and we are doing it. So we are going to go beyond what the auditors want. We are going to go beyond what the regulators want to do what is good. So that is ethics. And also to have a responsible corporate citizen. So in other words, as an organization, you are living in a broader society. It's not just you who come. Let's say it's a mining organization that is set up. Let's say it's going to do mining. You come up, you set up yourself, you go in, you dig a hole, get the minerals, and off you go back to where you came from. That's not it. You need to be a corporate citizen. So in other words, you are there as a broader community. So as you're mining, there are schools in the area. How are they doing? As you're mining, there are roads in the areas. How are they doing? As you're mining, what are the social issues around? your mind that are there. So you need also to think about and consider that, because you're living together in the same environment. And also as a mind, as you do your mining, are you thinking about the environment, or you just want to get all your minerals and leave the place, in a bad state? But perhaps actually King 5 is advocating that perhaps we should leave that area better than what we found it. So in terms of the environment. So corporate citizenship, we are looking at all the stakeholders that are there, and also we incorporate them. So just to frame that, leadership and ethics. It's principle number 1 and 2. Ethical leadership characteristic incorporate integrity, which is the acronym of this is ICRAFT: integrity, competence, responsible, accountability, fairness, and transparency. So in other words, integrity, I think, is very clear. When you say integrity, what you say is what it is. You don't say something and it turns out to be something. It must be, this is what you say and this is what it is. There's nothing else that we should expect, because you have integrity. Competence, the board must be competent, yes, to do its duty. We've seen, I think, some few years ago, even now, some board members where you question, are these competent? Are they competent to do their work? You wonder. A few years back, there was a DJ who was serving in a board for national entities, and you wonder the skill this person has and the work they're doing, it's not really adding up. Something's missing here. And of course, the performance of the organization will show that. Responsibility as a governing body, we need to be responsible, responsible corporate citizen. Yeah, that's the term I like to say it, like responsible corporate citizenship. We need to be responsible and also be accountable, for what we do. We need to account. Fairness, I think that was straightforward. We need to be fair in the way we discharge our duty as a governing body, not to favor certain people or certain whatever, to be biased, no, but to be fair. What is fair? And then we do that. What is just? And then we do that. We need to approach and make our decisions that way, not to be biased. I'm just thinking about this general who was saying that getting a loan from this drug lord, there's no problem. And I'm thinking, I don't understand how he's coming to this, because there is a problem. You stand for a law, you stand for what you stand for and who you are relating to. It's not adding up, and that's not it, Yeah, of course, now because of this commission, they being called to account, but it can show you how things are not good. But as governing body members or as board members, we need to be fair. We need to be transparent as we discharge our duty. So, in other words, when we do things, let's be willing to, be upfront in terms of our what we do. If it's financial, yeah, be willing to say no. If there's need for you to look, yeah, of course, because I did what was right and what is fair, and there is no reason why I should be afraid to disclose whenever it's called for. So transparency is required in our organization, not to have, because we know we have those offshore accounts and things like that. That's what is trying to address as board members. Ethics, governance beyond policy. So in other words, our ethics, I think I gave an example, must go beyond policies, must go beyond saying, one of our values is ethics. It's it's a cute statement, but believe me, it's not worth it. What makes it worth it is when you say you've got a poster right in the front that report an ethical practices to this number and email, and this is what we do. So now that changes, translate that statement to action that is done. And also when you've got that system for reporting, you must ensure that I'm gonna maybe just comment a bit on ethics and ethics policies. When you've got those ethics policies, they must be workshopped in the organization. People must know, what are these ethics policies? What does it mean? What is their responsibility? And set up maybe a reporting system, that is ways that is confidential, where people can report and they are not exposed to unnecessary. It reminds me of this organization is last week where one mentioned the organization I was engaging with or training with. It's a government-related organization, and then they gave the candidates to rate. Yeah, it's what do you call it? To feedback form. But the feedback form, each of the candidates were supposed to put their name. So this sort of defeats the purpose, because you want to ensure honest feedback. But you also want their names on the phone. So that was it. So the lady who was facilitating that had a difficult time to convince the participant that your information is safe, because if you want feedback, genuine feedback, then it must be anonymous, so that I can tell you exactly what I think about it, so that there is no assured that there is no won't be persecuted for giving my honest opinion. So when you've got the ethics policies, you workshop them in the organization, people know, and they know where to report, and also they are protected. Because this is one of the issues, again, also in our country. We've seen whistleblowers being harmed, even killed. A lot of them, we've actually we're compiling a list with organizations involved, with a list of all the people who have lost their life through whistleblowing. We've said the truth, but they went on and lost their life. So that also will be part of the policy. But apparently our president is advocating for the protection of whistleblower. So in terms of these two principles, it's about setting the tone and also the behavior gap. So we need to see how we are behaving, and the tone. We also need to look at that. As an organization as well, you might also need to have an ethics dashboard in your organization. Have a dashboard. What are the key issues at board level that are there? So probably in your organization, you've got an ethics committee at board level that will be responsible for the ethics in the organization. And also, it also become an interface with the relevant ethics officer in the organization, the senior ethics officer in the organization, and then ethics have an ethics dashboard where you've got all the information right in front in terms of the organization, where you monitor the ethics performance of the organization, and then you can report on that. Principle number 2 is about strategy, performance, and sustainable value creation. It's a lot that is here. So the governing body ensures that the organization's purpose, strategy, and business model support performance that creates sustainable value within the organization, economic, social, and environmental context. Yeah, it's a lot which has been said here. I think you can see, if you've read King 4, you see that here they combine two former King 4 principles into one, but they're related. Yeah, but it's a lot. So maybe to start is to just look at the strategy, right? The purpose, the strategy and business model of the organization. So the board is responsible for that. So the governing body is for oversight of that. And to ensure that it supports performance and value creation of the organization. So your strategy must ensure that you are creating value as an organization. So whatever value that you create. So it depends if you are in the government-related organization, you are looking, you use the term service delivery. If you are, but this is, remember, it's just one of the values that you're creating. You've got other stakeholders as well who are looking for other value. If you're a private, let's say look at an listed entity, the value that you are creating, it's not just your products that you're creating in the organization, but also your share price as well. It's also part of the value that you also are creating in the organization. This can go on to other areas, not just economic value, but also your social value, environmental value that you are also creating in your. So here, I think it's quite a lot. I like the idea of including the economic, social, and environmental context, because this now, from there, you translate this into your 6 capitals from there, right? Let's just do just an overview of this strategy and value creation. That's principle number 3. Strategy must integrate your ESG, environmental, social, and governance factor. So environmental, I think it's clear when you talk about the environment as an organization, you need to consider that. Some organization, environmental issues or factors are very critical. Let's say you are in mining, this is critical. But if you are in financial sector, maybe not so much. Probably it's for your clients, sort of the way you engage with them. Social factors, I think they encompass every business. Social factors in the organization and also around us. Then governance issues, I think this is straightforward from the governance point of view. Right. Maybe just to go back, when it comes social things like diversity and inclusion, they also come under social. So social, it encompasses all those social, even labor as well, labor issues, they fall under social. So all the social issues, governance issues, this comes, what comes in there is executive remuneration, governance issues, they come into that. So it's a good way of sort of packaging the various issue. Also, this principle also include the stakeholder impact. In other words, the stakeholders that we have in this organization. So the board must be aware. I think I was reading someone who say most boards don't even know their stakeholders, fully. Who are our stakeholders as an organization? What are their needs? So to go beyond just because what most organizations do, they are most reactive in terms of their stakeholder engagement. They wait for stakeholders to come and then they engage with them. They don't take a step to go proactive in terms of engagement, which start by mapping out and identifying your stakeholders as an organization. Who are our stakeholders? So stakeholders, these are people, organization, or groups that are affected by organization or affect our organization or perceive themselves to be affected by organization. So they are all stakeholders. So let's take a step to see how we can engage with it. So be proactive as you engage them. Don't wait to react once maybe they're protesting and then now you just want to do something, or where something gets in the media that is bad about what you are doing and then you want to respond to that. No, be proactive. So engage early and resolve the issues early before they go to the media, so that the reputation by so doing, you're actually protecting the reputation of your organization, because now you don't wait until it's social media, you are proactive in terms of engagement. As you look at strategy and value creation, remember, you're looking at long term. So as an organization, you don't exist for short term. You are there all the way. So this, I think, the long-term view also give assurance to stakeholders, especially when you look at, I think most of all stakeholders, they would rather have you to have a long-term view. So a strategic long-term view in terms of your operation. You are not here to just do what you do and you shut down and that's it, but you are here all the way. So you're long-term looking in terms of the environment that you're working in. If you are harming the environment, are you fixing it? So with King 5, when it came, I think from last year, there's now a term that is now being coined, which is regenerative governance. So this is an idea that our organization must leave things better than what we found them. So before we come here, what was the state? When we leave, it must be better than what we found. We need to make sure that we do better than just doing our business and then we go. We need to make sure that we leave our environment or the area that we live much better than what we found. Now, some things to think about across the sectors. Listed entities, they will look at ESG reporting as well. There's pressure in terms of reporting in terms of ESG because we need disclosure in terms of environmental, social, and governance issues in your organization. Non-profit as well, issues that are there include the mission versus sustainability. I think non-profit, we need a lot of work in non-profit. The mission of the organization versus sustainability. Is this sustainable? Because you don't want to be here and then next time you are no longer there. In private organization, some things to consider: growth versus governance maturity. So as we grow as an organization, is your governance maturity also growing? Are we becoming more mature? I'm going to take, just to go back one step. When you start, let's say it's a private company, usually you're a startup, governance is not really your main focus. And after all, there's no much to govern it, which I think is okay. It's understandable. So you maybe as a startup, a team, founders, you'll be responsible to do. You might not need a board. Maybe you might have an advisory board depending on the scope of your work, but governance may not be your main sort of priority because it's very simple. We are just a startup. Yes, our organization has no much impact, as an organization. But as you grow, things start to change. You have partners, have financiers, you're bringing in the funds, the governance needs to mature. And I believe recently we've seen startups that grow and then close, very quickly. It failed, it collapsed, and it's gone. The reason, if you look, is the governance maturity. So the growth of the company and the maturity of governance were not in sync. You were getting, let's say you do a startup, I won't mention the name, but I think it was based in Nigeria, but they brilliant ideas and they got funding. And before they know it, it's a massive organization and a lot of things are happening. But now the governance was not maturing at the same pace. You are running a multi-billion rand company like a spaza shop. So just to sort of, for lack of better words, you're running it like a spaza shop. So it differs. You need to have certain governance layers that are there. And apparently, if you are talking about billion rand organization, then your governance must be strong and various tools and systems in place to ensure governance, there's proper governance. So we've seen a lot of startups fail. Most of them, they fail for lack of governance maturity because they don't mature. When you are just a one-man business, you continue with the same mentality, and then you go on, and then eventually you don't have the policies in place, you don't have the standards, you don't have the procedures in place, you don't have the systems, the ecosystem. You just, and then before you know it, you come to start to lose the momentum that you lose, and then one day you discover that actually the whole system is not even making money. And then, you are in trouble. So it happens a lot. So this principle is about ensuring that we have proper systems in place for performance and sustainable value creation. So King 5 shifts governance mindset from do no harm to leave a positive legacy as an organization. So ushering in an era of regenerative governance. So we want to leave a positive legacy rather than just say, no, we came, we do our business, we didn't harm anyone. No, we need now to leave a legacy as an organization. I am going to pause here for a 15 minutes break. I know it's a very unfamiliar place to sort of take a break, but this is where we are. But we are going to take a 15 minutes break and we'll come back in 15 minutes time. But before we take the break, any comments or any questions? Any comments or any questions? You can use the chat. If you don't, you can't speak, you can actually use the chat function for that. All right. I don't see any hand. We are going to take a 15 minutes break. I will see you in 15 minutes time. All right, I hope we are all back. And then we can continue. Before I start sharing, I hope you managed to download your material. I just used the email that you sent with the Outlook invitation. So I've attached the documents. So the documents, there are 5 of them. The King Code, King 5 Code, King 5 Glossary, King 5 Disclosure Framework, the King 5 Foundational Concept, and also the King 5 Board Action Checklist that you can use as a tool when you go back in your board and how to navigate your transition to King 5. All right. I am going to continue from where we left before the break. So let's just put up the slides. Okay, just a second. I just want to check something. Yeah. Okay, it's recording. I just wanted to check that. Right. So we had just finished, or we are just going through the various principles, the 13 principles of King 5. And I'd say that King 6 had 16 principles, actually 17 was the other one for institutional investors. So now the difference between King 4 and King 5 is that in King 5, some of the principles were combined so that it's streamlined. There's no repetition to avoid that. Because when we were using King 4, we would feel that, some of these, it's a bit of repetition in a way, but now King 5 sort of addressed that. So we also looked at the clustered them into groups, so as for ease of discussion. So principle number 1 and 2, 1 is about leadership. Principle 2 is about ethics. And then principle number 3 is about strategy, performance, and sustainable value creation. And yeah, principle number 3, as you can see, it's a lot of information. And yeah, it's quite a strong one. And then I did not put in principle number 5. Maybe let me just show it on the slide. Let me just project it because I didn't put it on my slide. But now I'm thinking perhaps let's just do it anyway. So principle number 4, it's on reporting, right? So open it. So principle number 4 is on reporting. Right. So it says that the governing body ensures that external reports issued by the organization enable stakeholders to make informed assessments of the organizations, creates and preserves and erode value within its economic, social, and environmental context over the short, medium, and long term. Right. So the governing body must make basically reports that can be trusted by stakeholders. So reports that we generate, whether they are financial reports, annual reports, integrate, it must reflect the truth so that stakeholders can make informed decision about the organization. So whether we are not doing well, we must report it as is. If you are doing well, we must also report as is. But I always say that if you are reporting what you are not doing well, perhaps include what are we going to do to address that, so this is about reporting. Yeah, maybe maybe in future I'll put this also in the slides with others. I thought this is just one of those things we can just, but I think you should also put it in there. So that was principle number 4. Now, principle number 5, 6, and 7, I've put them together. So principle number 5 is about composition of the governing body. So the governing body ensures that its composition is balanced with the respect of the mix of competencies, diversity, and independence that enables it to discharge its obligations objectively and effectively. I like this because here there's a lot of things that has been covered: competencies, diversity, and independence. So when you talk about composition of a governing body, we want diversity. I think this is what we are sort of looking at. But now, when we say diversity, what is diversity? So is it by race? Is it by gender? So it's a lot of things. So we usually say by race or gender, but we forget, what about by age as well? You don't want a board where everyone is up there in their 50s, 60s, and there is no young, and especially if you're doing business with the younger generation, that won't look good on you. You are selling, let's say you are selling baby clothes and stuff, but the board is made up of people in their 60s. Yeah, you say you are grannies, but at least it must reflect the stakeholders that you have. So also by age, also diversity by places of origin. If you're a region, make sure that some of the region, you don't all come from one place, or you come from one school, or go from that school, or so it must be diverse in all of its sense. And also the idea of independence as well. So in the board, it's a good idea to ensure that you've got independent directors there. So I'm going to give you an example. So independence. So these directors don't have a relationship with the organization. So they're not doing business with organization, and they don't have shares in the organization. So they'll give you an independent opinion, because that's what they are there for. So that also enhances diversity, because now you have a few of the directors. Some people say, no, the majority must be independent, apparently. So they're not doing business. So for example, let's say we are voting for the dividend. Because they are not getting dividend, they will give a independent judgment. But if the other directors or everyone else is getting a dividend, probably you vote in favor of what benefits you economically. So I like this composition, inclusion of diversity as part of the independence as part of the diversity in the board, right? So the more diverse is, the better the board will perform. And also, because we are diverse, we see things from different angles, different views. We don't have the same blind spot. But if we are all coming from the same school, the same area, we've got the similar blind spots. So we won't see certain things coming until it has hit us. And then we wonder, what happened here? Because you're all from the same side, you are seeing the same angle. But the moment you are diverse, some people will actually raise some issues that this can be an issue because of then they give you a different angle. So you be covered in terms of your blind spot and also in terms of your world views as well, the way you also see the world. Now, principle number 6 is about committees of the governing body. Now, the governing body should ensure that the arrangements of delegations to committees and individuals within its own structures promote the objectives and effective discharge of its obligations. So now this one is about the committees of the governing body. So a board should have committees. So committees are delegated by the board to focus on certain areas. So you will have audit committee, risk committee, or ethics committee, or whatever function that is there. But if you are a public organization, for example, a public company or a government-related organization, there are some statutory requirements. For example, you must have an ethics committee, and you must also have what's the other one? Audit committee as well. So if you are one of those companies listed by legislation, you must have. But if you are not, it's optional. But you can even include the committees, increase the committees depending on what you want, the work that you have as a board. Because the purpose of the committees is to delegate the responsibilities of the board. Committees usually, sorry, I'm going to go a bit more on these. Committees usually don't approve, they take back whatever they find to the board. The board will make the decision. So they're there to just look at whatever is there in detail, maybe with special skills, special competencies in the committee. And some committees might even consult some people outside the board for certain things, and then they finalize, and then the board will now make a resolution on that. All right. So those are the committees of the board, right? And then number 7, it's appointment and delegation to management. Just give me a second. I just want to check. I saw, yeah, he's in. All right. Appointment and delegation to management, principle number 7. So the governing body should ensure that the appointment and delegation to management promotes operational effectiveness, and the respective roles and decision-making powers of the governing body and the management are clearly defined. So this is about delegation of power. So you need to have your delegation of power framework in the organization. Just to maybe go one step back in the event that you're not aware. So a delegation of power, because the board has the power, but it must give it to the executive. So maybe let me take another step back again. The shareholders have the ultimate power. The shareholders, they delegate the power to the board. The board delegates the power to the executive. So this is the levels that are there. First, the shareholders have the ultimate power because they own the organization. So it doesn't matter which, whether it's private or even non-profit. If you're members, they own the organization. So they're the shareholders. So they delegate to the board to make a decision on their behalf. The board, in turn, they delegate to executive. So now this is how it works. You've got a delegation of power framework that stipulates what the executive head, usually you delegate to the executive head, and who then sub-delegate to the other. So this system works in any environment, even government-related organization, let's say municipalities, you've got delegation of power framework is also there. So it's delegated from the top going downwards. So it must ensure there is operational effectiveness. You know, you don't want a delegation of power that stifle, that makes the a CEO, they can't do their work because everything, they need to go to the board for everything. No, delegate their power so that they can make decision and run the organization. Also, when we also do training on delegation of power, we also emphasize that the CEO must sub-delegate to the other executives in the organization. You don't want, you are procuring something for 500 Rand, you wait for the CEO to come and sign. That you can delegate to lower managers to also have authority around certain areas. So the idea here is to promote operational effectiveness. So the delegation from the board, starting from the shareholders to the board, from the board to the executive. And in the executive, usually to the CEO. The CEO then further sub-delegate to lower managers. Right. And also in the delegation of authority, you have your respective roles and decision-making powers of the executive. Now, just to wind up this, these 3 principles, composition, committees, and appointment of and delegation to management, it's about governance structures. So you can see here the composition and also the committees and delegation. So it's about governance structure. So board composition, about independence and delegation. So skills and metrics are now very critical. So you need to look and refine as you look at this. For example, when you look at board composition, you look at the metrics. Who do we have and what? And how can you improve the performance of the board? So sort of this is how you look at that. Just for practical side of it, if you are JSE listed, remember the tenure must not be more than 7 years for disclosure. So if someone is serving more than 9 years or 9 years, you might have to disclose. So the idea is to limit evergreen evergreen board members who in the board and they're there forever. So now it has got pros and cons, right? I think everything's pros and cons, but I think it's more of the disadvantages are more because if someone comes to serve in a board and they serve for 20 years, it's a long time, okay? I would say after 10 years, maybe is there something new you can offer the organization? Perhaps a better question, maybe use that time for succession planning, to raise the next generation. So if you're only there for 20 years, there is no room for others to grow. So there are more negatives than, because some people argue and say, no, the reason why we want them to stay in, it's because we don't want to lose their information. But the solution is to have your succession planning in place so that there is next generation. And in that way, we actually, remember the corporate citizenship, we grow now instead of having one person who's in there all the way. And also here, just also if you are just JOBEC listed entity, independent scrutiny as well. There has to be some disclosure that is required in terms of your independence and must be clear in terms of your independence. It's also required there, right? Right. Any comments? Oh, good. All right. Let me just check. I see there's a mic that okay, it's now muted. Great. Thanks. And there was a mic that was unmuted, but we're going to go ahead. Right. Let's look to it. The next set, which is principles number 8, 9, and 10. Right. So principle number 8 says that the governing body should govern risk in a way that enables the organization to sustain and optimize its strategies and objectives, right? So here around risk, right, as we govern it, we want to optimize on strategy and objectives. So in other words, our view of risk, they are in relation to strategy and objectives. So any risk to those things. So this is how we view it. So the way we govern the risk should be there to sustain and to optimize. So in other ways, we want to continue, it's about sustainability of the organization so that we continue. If we've got a strong performance, you want to sustain that as much as possible as we go, but to optimize it as well. So the way we look at risk, we look at it that way. And remember, when you talk about governance of risk is got two ways. It can be opportunities, it can be threats, but it's that uncertainty that we have when something is happening. And then we need now to make sure that the organization is sustained, and then we optimize in terms of our strategy. So things happen, and the board must respond to that. Which now when we are talking about risk, it just made me think about the Middle East. What's happening, the war there. Yeah, someone was saying, when did it start? And then I don't have any answer because, yeah, it has been growing, if I can say. But what is happening, the price of petroleum products, it's increasing. It's a risk. So if you've got an organization that consumes or deals with petroleum products, it's a risk that just emerged. So the question that we were discussing with one of my colleagues is now boards, usually they have 4 board meetings a year. Does this still work? Because these days, things can change. Within a month, things can escalate, and then we are in a certain area. Remember, last year, South Africa, DRC situation that happened. Things were normal, but within a month, we were somewhere else. So things can happen very quickly. So the question, should boards still have 4 board meetings a year? So boards will sit after every 3 months. But now in 3 months, a lot can happen. So is that effective governance? You know, it's something up for discussion. So it's a tradition that was adopted. I don't know by who. I believe it's a long time ago that boards will sit 4 times. Maybe it's a different environment. Maybe let's give it benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's a different environment when there are no major risks. It's business as usual. You just have 4 board meetings. But where we are, and especially in Africa, I don't think 4 meetings will be enough, because Africa is dynamic, and also the age that we're living in, things happen fast. So more than a month, things have changed. So yeah, it's just my thoughts around risk and the number of board meetings that we sit, and to say that perhaps we need to actually, what I'm seeing, we are having more than double that. Yeah. Maybe 10 times. Last year, there's one way to do 10 meetings, which I think, because we have things to do, we need to run an oversight and make decisions. So ended up last year's 10. So if I can give I would say, maybe 8, meetings instead of 4, especially if you're in Africa, and especially the organization is vulnerable to risks and so forth. So this is the principle number 8. Principle number 9, it's about compliance. The governing body governs compliance with the applicable laws and adopted policies, non-binding rules, codes, and standards in a way that promotes ethics and responsible corporate citizenship. Yeah, like they included ethics and corporate citizenship. They go hand in hand, right? So this is about compliance. So we need to comply with the law and also with our policies. Non-binding rules, codes, and stuff. If you say this is what we are, let's be what we say we are. So I think this one is straightforward. So you find that some of our compliance, we comply with external, some of the like policies that are internal. So whichever, when external, it's more of rules and regulations that are out there. We need to also comply. But internal, you've got policies and so on. But sometimes it's about also professional bodies, standards, and things like that. So we have to comply as an organization. Now, that is principle number 9. I won't spend a lot. I think, like I said before, in Africa, we are good on compliance. Now, principle number 9 is now the governance of technology. So data, information, and technology. So the governing body governs data, information, and technology in a way that enables the organization to sustain and optimize its strategy and objectives. So this principle is actually new. This was covered in King 4, it was covered under risk, but now it's now a freestanding principle. And I think it makes sense, because where we are, we definitely need it on its own. So governance of technology. So governing body must govern data, information, and technology in a way that enables organization to sustain and optimize its strategy and objectives. So we've got our strategy, we've got our objectives. So as we govern that, we want to optimize, we want to sustain, so that the organization keeps on operating, and we optimize, we reduce and minimize any risks, and in that area. So this one is straightforward. Now, just to sum up these 3, it's about risk, compliance, and technology, right? So risk, you find that risk, even in if someone right, so someone was unmuted, right? Okay, great. Let's just do an overview of this. These 3 are about risk, compliance, and technology. So so you can see if these issues are related somehow. So that's why I put them together like this. For example, when you talk about governance of technology, there are risks that are there as well. So compliance, it's about risk. So these are also related. That's why I put them all together like this. So risk, it's enterprise, look at ESG, you also look at digital as well. So it's a risk across the board. So enterprise risk to do with environmental, social, and governance, and risk to do with the digital or technology. So all that is part of the risk. So we've got AI that has just come in, but now we feel like it has been here forever. It has done a lot of disruption. So things have changed. So we need to govern that. How do we govern? Do we have policies in the organization that govern the organization's handling of information technology? So this is what we are looking. We need policies that are there, so that how are we going to use the AI in the organization? Cybersecurity, data governance is now, so all these are now at board level. So the shift here is that technology governance is no longer an IT issue, it's now a board and accountability issue. So instead of saying, hey, it's IT, now it's now board must be involved in it, because there's a lot of things that is happening. Actually, AI is reshaping the way we do business. Some organizations are struggling because of AI, because what they were doing suddenly, a machine can do it. So they planned to get their income in that particular whatever process, but now things have changed. I can give you last week I was reading an article. It's a media organization that is in trouble. The reason being, these tools that are coming in. If you don't adapt, change quick, you will find yourself just nowhere, and you're no longer relevant. And everyone goes somewhere else. So you have to make sure that you govern and you manage the risk that comes from this. Right. Sorry, let me go back again. I think I skipped one slide. Right. Now let's move on to the next three, which is principle number 11, number 12, and number 13, which is remuneration, which is number 11. So remuneration governance. So the governing body should ensure that the organization remunerates fairly, responsibly, and transparently to promote sustainable value creation. I like those words coming together: sustainable value creation, so that we are not just creating value, but it's sustainable, because we don't want just a get rich quick situation, but it's sustainable by the organization within its economic, social, and environmental context. So remuneration must be fair, must be responsible, must be transparent. So this is coming from a background where of executive remuneration. A few years back, it was a big issue pre-COVID, where CEOs were given a lot of money, especially when they retire. And if sometimes even when they wrecked the whole organization, they still get their perks, and you wonder, but why are they paying a lot of money to them for not doing what they're supposed to do? So this is coming at the background of that remuneration must be fair. So in other words, in an organization, should look at the whole value chain from the top until the bottom, and see rearrange the remuneration structure. And also it must be transparent. I know on this point, I was also reading that boards usually declare or disclose remuneration of the board members, but this is not what this is talking to. This is the whole organization, because now we know, especially listed entities, if you read their reports, they will show in how much each of the board members received or was paid in fees. This is not what it's talking about. This is talking about the whole remuneration in the organization, which must be fair, responsible, and transparent, and ensure sustainable value creation of the organization. The next principle, number 12, is assurance. So assurance is very important. We need to be assured, that things are okay in the organization. So the governing body should ensure that the assurance functions and services promote effective internal control environment and safeguard the integrity of external reports issued by the organization. So here, when you talk about the assurance, the audit, the audit is responsible for this. So you looking at audit. So those functions which give assurance that things are okay in the organizations, or what degree of assurance, must promote an effective internal control in the organization in terms of all that is there. So we find that the internal audit is usually responsible for that, and to ensure that things are okay in the organization. In the internal, these are internal functions, but also we've got external assurance providers, which involve the external audits. So when you say audits, we're not talking about financial only. We're talking about all the audit that is there, right? So when you talk about, let's say you're a mining organization, internal auditing of your safety, it's included in internal auditing of your whatever that you do, those internal audits, it all encompasses. So it's not just financial, or because here, the idea of assurance, it's about risk. So here we want to assure, right, that the risk have been considered and things are okay in terms of various financial safety in this case and so forth. But also you've got external assurance provider. So this is now the external editors who come in financially and for other things as well. They come in if you are a ISO, let's say, certified organization, the ISO will come sending people, these are external auditors coming to give assurance that you are, abiding by this, whatever standards that is there. So this is about assurance. So the board is also responsible for that. Then the last principle is the stakeholders. Just give me a second, just to check something here. I think I found it. I'm going to go to that just now. Just give me a second. Looking for that. Okay, thank you. Great. So the last principle is principle number 13. It's about stakeholders. So the governing body adopts or should adopt a stakeholder inclusive approach in the execution of its duties in the long-term best interests of the organization within its economic, social, and environmental context. This is one of also my favorite, right? Here is the idea is that the governing body, you are not there to serve shareholders only or providers of capital. You need to have a stakeholder inclusive approach. So you include all material stakeholders as you make your decisions, not just providers of capital. So you need to include all. The reason being, I'm going to give a good one that applies to South Africa. If you don't include labor as a stakeholder, the labor can shut down the organization, and then the providers of capital won't have their interest. So they are related, some stakeholders. So you have to consider all of them, not just one side, but all of them, all inclusive approach in the execution of the of the duties in the long-term best interest. So when we make decisions in the board, it's about the long-term interest of the organization. It's not just for the next coming week, month, and then one, but the long term. In other words, it's about sustainability, that the organization must continue to exist even, long term, and also considering the economic, social, and environmental context of the organization. So this is the principle number 3, all inclusive when it comes to stakeholder approach. So just to sum up these 3, it's about remuneration, assurance, and stakeholders. So pay, fair, and also internal equity. I think here in terms of fair remuneration, I think at the end, I'm going to just give you some ideas. But where I'll be saying is that when it comes to remuneration, you might have to benchmark with other organizations, similar organizations, to see where you are and sort of work through it, not just inside, but also consider other organizations as well. Internal equity, I think this is clear. Combined assurance model. So combined assurance model, it's where you've got internal and external insuring. In other words, inside the organization and outside the organization, when things are okay, then we could combine assurance, right? And then stakeholder inclusivity, it's about the Ubuntu principle, Ubuntu Mudungabantu. So this is the approach that we are a community, we are all together in this. And then we need to consider everyone. Just a tip for JOBEC listed entities, there is a 75% remuneration threshold for JOBEC listed entities. Actually, this reminds me, there's if anyone is interested, I've got a King 5 implication for JOBEC listed entities. So in other words, I looked at the JOBEC listed listing requirements versus the King 5, so that we see what needs to change. So if anyone is interested in that document, I can give you that. So if you've got a JOBEC listed entity, you can know how to transition, right? So this brings us to the end of the principles. Any comments before we look at the shifts now? What changed from King 4 to King 5? Right, I put them close together like this so that it's sort of easy to sort of look at it, right? But it's a lot of information just to show what was in King 4 and what is now in King 5, right? The number of principles they changed, right? King 4, it was 7 principles, right? 16 for all organization and 1 for institutional investors. But now we now have 3. We call them core principles, yeah. And then disclosure approach, apply and explain in King 4. We maintain that in King 5, but we got standardized disclosure templates. I think I've shown you that can be used for that. The structure, King 4 was a single document with sector supplements, but King 5, now it is deconstructed with codes, glossary, and disclosure templates, and the overview, right? Just to talk about the structure again. Now, what is happening in King 4? Because someone was asking, where are the sector supplements now, right? So the sector supplement, for those who are not aware, King 4 had sector supplements, right? So now I hope I'm gonna count them. I'm gonna remember them. We had the local government, municipalities, that's what it was called, supplement for municipalities, supplement for state-owned enterprises, supplement for the non-profit, supplement for, but there were various 5 of them, sector supplements, right? Now in King 5, the sector supplements are still there, but what Institute of Directors have done, they have become guidance documents instead of becoming part of King 5. They are guidance documents, so you can still download them and also read as well. They still work the same, but they are guidance documents for various sectors, right? Then sustainability and ESG reporting in King 4, there were general guidelines implied under the triple context, which is the environmental, economic, and social, right? But now King 5. It take into if you read in the glossary, it actually quotes the ESRS as well as the ISSB as well. So it also quotes. So the in terms of sustainability is aligned with international sort of best practices, right? Remuneration, King 4 just mentioned about the pay gap, but King 5 says that now requires a discussion of internal pay equity and organization-wide fairness, right? Board composition, King 5, general guidance, King 4, general guidance, King 5, clear rules, for example, the 9-year tenure sort of being also cooling off periods as well, sort of being discussed there. Governance outcomes, ethical culture, performance, control, legitimacy, they are the same, but they've been reinforced now. With the Ubuntu fairness and stakeholder inclusivity. Then technology governance in King 4, it's referenced, there's limited, but in 5 it's explicit. Also, there's actually a principle of the governance of technology. The tone and format for King 4, that's formal but complex. King 5 is simpler language. There's also glossary as well for clarity, disclosure document, so it's more easier to use than King 4. Right. Just to overview of those details. So we're moving from compliance to outcomes. So it's outcome based. So governance is judged by outcomes, not activity. From reporting to accountability. Reporting, yes, it's good, but accountability is much more. So about accountability, increased narrative accountability under disclosure regime. So this is where it's more of accountability. And then from ESG to integrated value. So sustainability, integration, ESG efforts must align with value creation disclosure. So it makes sense. From IT risk to digital governance. So overview of data, ethics, AI usage, and information governance become a board level matter. Apparently, there's now a principle on that. Number 5, from independence to transparency of independence. Yes, King 4 was saying independence, but King 5 said no, be transparent with your independence so that it's clear what it is. So there's more scrutiny on board tenure, diversity, and independence declarations that comes with King 5. In terms of remuneration, there's now governance of remuneration must address fairness across the value chain and not just executive pay. So it's now the whole organization, not just the senior leaders in the organization. Right. Just to say what has changed. So board are now expected to be as transparent about their ethics as they are about their earnings. So this is sort of more just summarize. So our transparency is not just about ethics, but also our earnings. Boards that, this is just my comments, boards that implemented King 4, well, we'll find King 5, natural because it makes sense, where we are going, given where we are. So these are just my few comments just to end that section, right? Any comments before we look briefly around disclosure? So now King 5, like I said, is big on disclosure. We need to disclose what is happening in the organization. Even those things that we don't want to be known, we have to disclose. So there is a King 5 disclosure framework, right? Maybe let me just go to that. Yeah, maybe before I go there, it's mandatory if you are claiming to apply it. So if you are saying you are disclosing, then it becomes mandatory, to sort of do it according to that framework. It's structured narrative, a context, process, and outcome. I'm going to go through to that disclosure template now. Just go back into that. I'm going to open that document and just go through it because it's the only document that we didn't go through. So the disclosure framework, they are, so what they have done in King 5 is that with each principle, what do you need to disclose? So it makes things much a bit easy as you are also aligning yourself with the King 5, right? So, right, just right. So remember, they explain, apply and explain are still applicable, but also you need to disclose. So this is where it's coming from. We used to say apply and explain, and you may disclose, but now we are sort of giving guidance in terms of that, right? So this is just a framework that you can use. You don't have to use word by word. I think this is one of the questions someone was asking. Should we take this template and then fill it as is? No, not exactly. Use this template as a guideline on how you do it. So in other words, you don't have to do it word by word, because your organization is unique, so customize it so that it talks to your organization, but this is a general format of the disclosure, right? So on the top, you've got your preliminary information, name of organization, reporting period, full reporting suite approved by, in the governing body. So the board must approve this, Then in principle number 1, this is the explanation and disclosures, right? So there's details that comes into that. So when we talk about principle number 1, it's about leadership. So what do we disclose? Then principle number 2, move on to ethics, sort of guidelines, what you should disclose. So this now helps a lot. Principle number 3, so it covers all, like principle number 4, it's about reporting and what disclosure that is related to reporting. But remember, reporting is disclosure as well. So here you find that this might not be so applicable, but because reporting is disclosure itself, right? And then the next one here also gives specific disclosures that goes with this principle. And then principle 6, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 will be the last principle. That is it. So use this template as guidance for your organization. So just take it. Apparently it's a PDF, but if you can just use this as a way of structuring your disclosure report. So you can use this one, right? It's the idea around it. Okay, now let's go back now just to continue on the disclosure. So the question in summary, so what is it do we need to disclose, right? Here with an image of pollution happening, probably this is what you need to disclose in your organization. Are you polluting? You need to say the truth. What are you really doing? And how much of it you need to make the public be aware of some of these things. It's not good to disclosure. It's painful, but it's necessary if you are going to get better. What boards must disclose: ethics, effectiveness, board performance, risk and technology governance, stakeholder relationships. So all this the board must disclose, right? And then some practical example. This I'm not going to go through it because we are losing time. But here, if your annual report, this is just a question for myself. If your annual report was to be audited for honesty, will it pass? So this is in your organization, you put an annual report, even your financial statements. Are they honest, or they have been doctored or cooked, whichever term that you want to use? So this is just to end that part about disclosure. So what does King 5 mean across the sector? So this is just, let's put this highlight to just show. Okay, the images are not coming up. Okay, it's fine. Across the sector. So listed entities, there's increased disclosure depth that you need to do, remuneration scrutiny, digital governance expectations. So if you are a listed entity, this is what you expect. Private companies, governance become an investor expectations. So they expect you to govern well. They're going to ask you, have you adopted King 5? So be prepared. Institutionalization of the board practice as well as private companies. State-owned entities and public sector, legitimacy and accountability is very critical. Governance failures and national impact, be in mind with that, because whatever you are governing, they've painted you already, or they've already started to paint you in a certain way. So remember those layers. Non-profit organization, governance is trust. So if your governance is good, you will be trusted, and that trust becomes your currency because you want to raise funds. So that becomes if your providers of capital in non-profit don't have trust, you won't be able to raise the money. Even if you were a member-based non-profit, those members are going to be reluctant to pay their dues because of governing issue. Stakeholder legitimacy is more important than profit, so just be aware of that. So King 5 applies to all organizations, not just listed entities. Boards in action. So this is the practical side of it. I am going to go now to the checklist that I have sent you So let's just see what's here. So yeah, we're going to look at the checklist. So this checklist can be used by the chair as a tool. If you're a board chair, you can use it as a tool in terms of make sure that you comply. You move on to adopt your King 5. Also, AGM ready references as well. I'm going to talk about that. Also, governance audit tool as well. Right. So let me just go to the checklist quickly, and then I'm going to go through it. Right, I've sent that to you, so you should be able to follow through. So it's a King 5 board action checklist. So this is the checklist. Right, I'm going to go through it briefly just to check if there are things that may need to be restated. So the way I've structured it is there is a part A, maybe just call it part A, which can be used by chairperson or AGM reference because it's not detailed. That's the reason. So it's the same information in the detailed one, part B, but here I highlighted what the chair should just focus on. The rest, the whole board can sort of focus on. So that's the idea, so that the chair has got a quick reference that they can sort of use. So this is the part A, which is the chair or AGM quick reference. So just talk about the purpose, just for preliminary information. And then now the section now, immediate board priorities, maybe for the next 30 days, what the chair must focus on. Schedule a King 5 alignment discussion, confirm implementation roadmap, etc. in the next 30 days. Then now in the horizon, maybe 3 to 6 months, now you do your strategic governance alignment, reassess long-term value creation strategy, and you look at all that in the next 6 months. And then number 6, disclosure readiness. So before the AGM, because now when you go to the AGM, you need to go there ready, with your things in order. So with your annual report, you're going to present it. So these are the checks you may need to do. Conduct a King 5 disclosure framework, gap analysis, and so forth. So these are the things that you need to look at before the AGM. Audit committee focus. And these are the things which the audit committee will look at. And then board effective test. You need to ask yourself these questions. For example, are we independent in substance, not only in form? So are we as a board independent? So this is chair asking, are we creating long-term regenerative value? Does our board operate as a collective mind? Will stakeholders describe our governance as legitimate? Yeah, these are questions for the chair to ask. Right. And then also put, once you do this review, there's a scale that you can use. Where are you? If you are level 1, it's awareness. So you're just beginning, right? If you're level 2, you just have alignment, which is much better. Level 3, integration. I think most organizations will be in this integration and alignment. And then level number 4, this is the most top level, regenerative leadership. This is where you want to aspire to be, right? So this part is for the chair, but the next part, this is now the detailed checklist. So this you can use for a board as you sort of look at things in the organization. I also did a bit of an introduction so that we've got a context in terms of what we are doing. And also, I also use this document as a board discussion tool, as a governance gap analysis guide, also an audit and risk committee oversight checklist, also as a pre-AGM preparation resource. So before the AGM, you can also use this again, right? Now, I've divided into sections again. There's immediate board actions, right? That need to be done in the next 30 days. Governance reset. So these are the activities that you can sort of check and do. Then you look at the board composition. So also look at that. Audit and risk oversight, you also look at that. Then section number 3 is now strategic governance alignment. So in the next 3 months, so these are more medium term sort of view, you look at your ethical leadership culture, regenerative governance, stakeholder inclusivity, Ubuntu principle, and then you go to section number 4, which is now disclosure readiness. So, like I pointed out just above, this may be when you've got an AGM coming. Now you need to prepare yourself, or you're preparing an annual report. So annual report realignment. So you also look at these issues: remuneration oversight, audit and risk committee focus, other disclosure readiness, and that you also need to look at that are not there: independence criteria, tenure, AA, oversight, remuneration, fairness. So you also need to look at that. Then section number 5 is the effectiveness of the board. So this is now performance of the board. Is the board performing well? So also need to look at that as well. To align again with the King 5. So board performance, governance integration, and then some questions to ask again. They're also there as well for you as an individual board member. And then now, once you evaluate it yourself, you can classify your organization according to the 4 levels. Level number 1, awareness, which means the board has read and discussed King 5. So it's just the beginning. Then alignment, charters and policies are updated. This is sort of where most still see number of organizations. Then integration, King 5 embedded in risk and strategy and reporting. And then the final level, the ultimate, it's regenerative leadership. Board actually drives sustainable, ethical, and long-term value. So these are the 5 sort of 4 levels that you classify your organization. So use this template as you look at your board. You use it as a tool to just check how you are doing in terms of adopting King 5, right? We are sort of moving towards the end of the session. So let me just go back to the slides. But before I sort of go back to sort of wind up, I just want to give a bit of another recommendations, if I can say, right? What you can do is you sort of for immediate action, as you align with King 5, conduct a King 4-5 compliance audit, review, align all board charters, terms of reference, policies, ethics standards to align with updated independence, ethics, and ESG requirements, strengthen your board composition, introduce digital governance oversight if you don't have it already. Also, your board development, refresher training, also stakeholder inclusive governance. Those are the things that you'll be looking at in that training. What is stakeholder inclusive governance? What is integrated thinking? What is the governance of technology and data? So also look at that. Incorporate King 5 in board and committee evaluation. So during your board evaluation now, you also include that as well. Also, for immediate action, your disclosure alignment. Begin adapting the next integrated report using a King 5 disclosure template. Link your ESG strategy to governance outcomes and stakeholder relationship. Also, integrate reporting. Prepare for the next integrated reporting alignment. So you need to align your integrated report. Embed your King 5 disclosures in the next annual report or integrated report. Strategic culture initiatives. So now also to create that culture, embed your Ubuntu and ethical leadership into the boardroom dynamics, define and monitor internal pay equity and ESG linked KPI. So these are some of the actions that you should maybe take back to your board and to start to sort of work on besides the checklist. Just to finalize that, remember the functions of the board as you think about this: accountability. These are the responsibility or function of the board: responsibility, steering and setting the direction, policy and planning, oversight and monitoring. So be aware of this as you do that. In closing, right, governance should be looked at as a competitive advantage. So it puts you on a competitive advantage as an organization. So when you talk about competition, usually we think that, oh, private companies, because, we are private companies, you compete. But non-profit also compete. You're competing for resources, for funding, for various things that you're so your governance is going to position you in a competitive advantage. So your board must think systematically as you think, act ethically, and also lead strategic as you lead your board. King 5 is not just asking the board to do more, but it is also asking them to think differently. So whatever we do, let's just think a bit differently from what we've been doing. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. I am going to pause here for any comments or any questions. It has been a long one. So it's now your turn if you need to ask any question or any comments. And apparently, I can't see your hands. You can just unmute and then you can provide your comments or questions.
Yeah, so a question from my side is, this has been very helpful, and I can imagine a large company like Vodacom that's listed has to follow this in quite a lot of detail. But if you're talking about a small company, private company, or perhaps a small NGO that's got a turnover of 3 million Rand a year, then obviously the extent to which you apply King 5 is going to be quite different.
Yeah, thanks, Luis, for those comments. Steve, rather. Thanks for those comments. Yeah. Any other comments or any questions? Are we ready for King 5? We've got the tools. I made sure you've got everything that you need to just jump in, and then you can, start to contribute to your board, your organization. All right. In the absence of any comments, I see Doc, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much for such insightful presentation. We really appreciate. I was hoping that we can continue maybe for 1 more hour because it was so interesting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments.
So that wasn't a comment, Taka, it was actually a question. So how does one apply it across the different sizes of companies?
Oh, yes, sorry. I ended just hearing the comment, but yeah, I now see that it's a question. Yeah. So King 5, I think I went on the slide where I say it's a cut across for larger organization, usually governance. Yeah, I'm going to move on to say governance. That's why I think I mentioned about maturity of governance with the growth of the organization. So for large organization, it's sort of easier, and it's not easy. Yeah, easy is not the right way to. It's clearly defined. So when you apply this, it's sort of easy to see where to look for and what to do. But for smaller organizations now, this is now the question, because usually find that a small enterprise will ask, so what do we do? What's in it for us? For smaller organization, I think it's much easier, because for smaller organization, some of the things you might not need to include them, for your organization. So which much it's easier for you, but you try as much as possible. I think this is how we should have put it across. Try as much as possible. You are complying with each of them, and you'll find that perhaps you may not even have a board, right? But whoever is there, the executive, just ensure that those functions or those things are done. It might not be by the board, but someone in the organization must sort of be responsible for that. Steve, I know I didn't answer in a clear way, because there is no clear answer, but I hope I've attempted to answer it. Or any follow-up questions to that? Right, it's okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments before we break? All right, I don't see any other hand. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure having you on this masterclass from King 4 to King 5, what boards must do in terms of this change, and also what boards must know. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and your afternoon. I hope to meet you again in one of our sessions. Have a great day.